Reverb is used by all types of musicians, producers, and it's a great tool that has many different uses. But what a lot of people don't know is how to properly use it to get the most out of this effect. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some reverb tips and tricks for those guitar players who use reverb pedals on their pedal board, for producers who use reverb within their mixing, and even how to get a great natural reverb for those who like to experiment with live recording. Now, when I said properly use it, it's not like there are strict rules you have to follow, but there are things that are good to know about how to use it in different situations, and I'm going to break them down for you right now. When using reverb on your pedal board, it's important to know what type of sound you are going for. Are you going for that crisp and clean reverb sound, or do you want more of a muddy and clogged sound? Now, most guitar players will say the clean and crisp reverb sound, but there is a time and place for that muddy-ish sound sometimes, but very rarely. Here's an example of that muddy and clogged reverb tone versus the clean and crisp sound. Now, since most guitar players want to avoid that clogged sound altogether, here's a few reasons into why you could be getting this sound in the first place. One, your pedal chain is out of order. This means that your distortion or overdrive pedal is coming after your reverb. So as you can see here, I have the golden reverberator coming after the Strymon Deco. This has some overdrive to it. If this Deco came after the reverb pedal, that's when you'll get that muddy, gross, kind of just not good reverb sound. Two, you are using a high gain amp and putting your reverb pedal in front of the amp instead of using the FX loop that's on the back of the amp if your amp has one. And three, you're using very high levels of that reverb. If you have a high gain amp like this and you're putting your reverb pedal in front of the amp, you have to use super low levels of that reverb or else you'll get that distorted and muddy sound. The simple fix to this is utilizing the FX loop in the back of the amp. If you're confused about how that would work, it's pretty much the same idea as putting your reverb after your distortion pedal. When you put the reverb in the front of the amp, that's the same idea as putting your overdrive or distortion pedal after your reverb. When you put the reverb through the FX loop or you put your reverb after your overdrive, that's the best order in your pedal chain that will give you the best reverb sound. Most high gain amps like this one don't take these wet reverb effects very well compared to a deluxe reverb, for example. So if you're really big on those wet effects, reverb, delays, whatever, I would really recommend getting a cleaner amp. So now we have our reverb set up properly. It's in the right order in our pedal chain, or we're using the FX loop now. Let's now look into the knobs on this reverb pedal to get the best sound possible. On most pedals, you'll have a decay, a pre-delay, and a mix knob. The decay determines how long you want the reverb to go on for. The pre-delay determines how quick you want the reverb to respond to your playing. And the mix knob is how much of the reverb effect you want. These other knobs may or may not be on your reverb pedal, but we have bass, which for the golden reverberator also acts as a sort of decay. We have treble and modulation. And for these three switches in the middle, we have the 3 or 4 types of options of reverb: hall, spring, plate, and chamber. This is the preset switch, and this has 3 types of each different reverb. Now, depending on your playing situation, it's important to dial in the proper reverb effect. For example, if you're playing a gig in a small club with a decent sized room, then using room reverb on your pedal would be completely unnecessary. In that scenario, I would only use reverb as a cool effect during a particular part of a song that would lift it and make it sound bigger or more interesting, instead of using it as a constant background that we guitar players would normally use it for. No matter the situation, you also don't want to overuse it, especially during your solos. If you're playing rhythm, lead, and all sorts of guitar parts, and your reverb mix is high, there won't be as much clarity compared to if you were using lower levels of that reverb. If you want to preserve your guitar tone and have the reverb work with your tone and sound, a lot of that has to do with pre-delay. The higher the pre-delay, the more space or a gap will take place between when you strike a note and the reverb itself. So this is great for ambient reverb rhythm and leads, or if you need to use a super wet reverb effect for a song, but you still want to keep most of your tone. So the next section of this video, we're going to be talking about using natural reverb as well as using it in your mix if you produce music. Now, when I'm recording guitar, I preferred the old way of miking up your amp and recording it that way. Now, when I do that, I almost never use a reverb pedal when I'm recording. I like to record guitars dry and add the reverb later. This is a much better approach in my opinion because you can't take away that reverb when you recorded it through the amp later on in the mix if you end up wanting less reverb. So if you like to mic up your amp, just record it dry. Don't use any wet, delay, or reverb effects unless it is necessary for the song. Now, with that being said, you're gonna wanna add reverb to these dry tracks. There are a million ways you can do this, but here are some tips that I like to use with my own mix. So I like to bus my reverbs. That way I have much more control as to how much is in the mix, which pan direction I want it to go, as well as the volume of the reverb. The problem with throwing a reverb right onto your track without bussing it is that you have less control of it. And when mixing, you want as much room to work with as possible. I even go as far as EQing my reverbs to get rid of more of that unnecessary space that's being occupied on the lower and higher ends of its frequencies. You wouldn't be able to do any of that if you recorded reverb through your amp, so just another reason why you should consider recording dry. Now, if you're one who likes to experiment and you have the tools and space for it, then record natural reverb. All you need is two things: a room, any size really, depending on the size of the room you'll get a different sound, and a room mic. Now, if you wanted to do this, I would place your room mic as far away from the amp as possible and more towards the ceiling for that bigger room sound. For me, I don't have a high ceiling, but I do have a longer room, so I'm gonna set this up and show you what it sounds like. So I placed the Sheriff 22 towards the end and the middle of the room. So we have it right here, it's mic'd up. And this is where I will have the room mic in this extra room right here. So we have the distance about this far. You can already hear a huge difference in the sound of the room when I put it towards the center. Normally it is up against the wall, and it's also an open back cab, so that's also good to know. All right, so let's test this out and see what it sounds like. I think it sounds pretty cool. Now, I think it would sound better if this room was treated and was built for recording, but for what it is, I think that it could work. Now, I've also been thinking about making a whole other video about natural reverb and finding what the best natural reverb sound is and doing real life examples. But I'd have to get access to a few places and rooms before I can start making or recording the video. And since the weather's getting a bit colder in PA, I'd probably have to do an indoor version of natural reverb. So places like small auditoriums, gymnasiums, small stadiums, gauges, etc. So if you would be interested in seeing a video like that, let me know in the comments. And if you aren't subscribed and are interested in seeing that video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell down below so you can see when I eventually post that video. So there you have it, some reverb tips and tricks for the guitar player, producer, and experimenter. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments what your favorite reverb is, like Hall, Spring, Plate, whatever it is, let me know. If you want to see a full in-depth demo of the Golden Reverberator by Universal Audio, you can do so right here, and I'll also link it down in the comments. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you guys next week, and don't forget to keep on playing.